The time will undoubtedly come when the entire area of this noble valley will be tilled like a garden, when the fertilizing waters of the mountains now flowing to the sea will be distributed to every acre, giving rise to prosperous towns, wealth, arts, etc. Then I suppose there will be a few left, even among the botanists, to deplore the vanished primeval flora. In the meantime, the pure waste going on, the wanton destruction of the innocents is a sad sight to see, and the sun may very well be pitted in being compelled to look on. The bee pastures of the coast ranges last longer and are more varied than those of the Great Plain, on account of differences of soil and climate, moisture and shade, etc. Some of the mountains are upward to 4,000 feet in height, and small streams, springs, oozy bags, etc. occur in great abundance and variety in the wooded regions, while open parks flooded with sunshine and girt valleys lying at different elevations, each with its own peculiar climate and exposure, possesses the required conditions for the development of species and families of plants widely varied. Next, the plain, there is a first series of smooth hills planted with a rich and showy vegetation that differs but little from that of the plain itself, as if the edge of the plain had been lifted and bent into flowing folds, with all its flowers in place, only toned down a little as their luxuriance, and a few new species introduced, such as the hill lupines, mints, gilias. The colors show finely when thus held to view on the slopes, patches of red, purple, blue, yellow, and white bleeding around the edges, the whole appearing at little distance like a map colored in sections. Above this lies the park and chaparral region, with oaks mostly evergreen planted wide apart, and blooming shrubs from 3 to 10 feet high, manzanita and cianthus of several species, mixed with ramus, ceres, picangeria, cherry, emilicia, adenstoma, and shaggy interlocking thickets, and many species of Haxokia, clover, monderla, castilla, etc. in the openings. The main ranges send out spurs somewhat parallel to their axes, enclosing level valleys, most of them quite extensive and containing a great profusion of sun-loving bee flowers in their wild state. But these are, in great part, already lost to the bees by cultivation. Near the coast are the great forests of the redwoods, extending from near the Oregon line to Santa Cruz. Beneath the cool, deep shade of these majestic trees, the ground is occupied by ferns, chiefly woodwardia and aspidiums, with only a few flowering plants, oxalias, trillias, ethereum, fritillaria, similac, and other shade lovers. But all along the redwood belt there are sunny openings on the hill slopes, looking to the south, where the giant trees stand back and give ground to small sunflowers in the beads. Around the lofty redwood walls of the little bee acres, there is usually a fringe of chestnut oak, laurel, and mondoro, the last of which is a surprisingly beautiful tree and a great favorite with the bees. The trunks of the largest specimens are 7 or 8 feet thick and about 50 feet high. The bark red and chocolate colored, the leaves plain, large, and glossy, like those of Mongolia glandifolia, while the flowers are yellowish white and urn-shaped, and well-proportioned panicles. From 5 to 10 inches long, when in full bloom, a single tree seems to be visited at times by a whole hive of bees at once, and the deep thum of such a multitude makes the listener guess that more than the ordinary work of honey winning must be going on. How perfectly enchanting and care obliterating are these withdrawn gardens of the woods, long vistas opening to the sea, sunshine sifting and pouring upon the flowery ground in tremulous, shifting mosaic as the light sways in the leafy wall open and close with the swaying breeze, shining leaves and flowers, birds and bees mingling together in springtime harmony, and soothing fragrance exhaling from a thousand fountains. In these balmy, dissolving days when the deep heartbeats of nature are felt thrilling rocks and trees and everything alike common business and friends are happily forgotten. And even the natural honey work of bees and the care of birds for their young and mothers for their children seems slightly out of place. To the northward in Humboldt and the adjacent counties, whole hillsides are covered with rhododendron, making a glorious melody of bee bloom in spring. And the winter western azalea, hardly less flowery, grows in the massy thickets, 3 to 8 feet high around the edge of the groves and far woods as far south as St. Louis Obispo, usually accompanied by manzita, while the valleys, with their varying moisture and shade, yield a rich variety of the smaller honey flowers such as mentha, lycopus, mycomeria, atterburia, trichostemma, and other mints, with vaxium, wild strawberries, geranium, calais, and goldenrod. And in the cool glens along the stream banks where the shade of trees is not too deep, sphaeria, dogwood, heteromelees, and calycanthus, and many species of rubus form interlacing tangles, some portion of which continues in bloom for months. Though the coast region was the first to be invaded and settled by white men, it has suffered less from a bee point of view than either of the other main divisions, chiefly no doubt because of the unevenness of the surface and because it is owned and protected instead of lying exposed to the flocks of the wandering sheepmen. These remarks apply more particularly to the north half of the coast. Further south, there is less moisture, less forest shade, and the honey flora is less varied. The Sierra region is the largest of the three main divisions of the bee lands of the state, and the most regularly varied in its subdivisions, owing to their gradual rise from the level of the central plain to the alpine summits. The foothill region is about as dry and sunful as from the end of May until the setting in the winter rains. As the plain, there are no shady forests, no damp glens at all like those lying at the same elevation in the coast mountains. The social composite of the plain, with few added species, form the bulk of the herbaceous portion of the vegetation up to a height of 1,500 feet or more, shaded lightly here and there with oaks and sabine pines and interrupted by patches of cypress and buckeye. Above this, and just below the forest region, there is a dark heath-like belt of chaparral composed almost exclusively of Anastroma vesiculata, a bush belonging to the rose family. From 5 to 8 feet high, with small round leaves and fascicles and bearing a multitude of small white flowers and panicles on the ends of the upper branches. Here it occurs at all. It usually covers all the ground with a close impenetrable growth, scarcely broken for miles. Up through the forest region to a height of about 9,000 feet above the sea level, there are ragged patches of manzita and 5 or 6 species of xanthus called deerbrush or California lilac. These are the most important of all the honey-bearing bushes of the sphaeria. Cambida foliosa, a little shrub about a foot high with flowers like the strawberry, make handsome carpets beneath the pines and seems to be a favorite with the bees, while pines themselves furnish unlimited quantities of pollen and honeydew. Larkspurs pedicularis, castilius, and clover. The alpine region contains the flowery glacier meadows and countless small gardens in all sorts of places, full of potentiala of several species, blessed with flowers, dwarf or phlox, penanthium, ribs, eulisla, etc. And I have seen wild bees and butterflies feeding at a height of 1,300 feet above the sea. However, that I can go up these dangerous heights, never come down again. Some undoubtedly perish in storms, and I have found thousands lying die or been numbered on the surface of the glaciers, to which they had perhaps been attracted by the white glare, taking them for beds of bloom. From swarms that escaped their owners in lowland, the honeybee is now generally distributed throughout the full length of the Sierra up to an elevation of 8,000 feet at above sea level. At this height, they flourish without care, though through the snow every winter is deep. Even higher than this, several bees have been cut, which contained over 200 pounds of honey. The destructive action of sheep has been so general on the mountain pastures as on those of the Great Plain, but in many places it has been more complete owing to the more friable character of the soil and its sloping position. The plant digging and down raking action of hooves on the steeper slopes of moraines has uprooted and buried many of the tender plants from year to year without allowing them time to mature their seeds. The shrubs too are badly bitten, especially the various species of Cealthus. Fortunately, neither sheep nor cattle care to feed on the Manzita, Spira, or Edistoma. And these fine honey bushes are too stiff and tall, or grow in places too rough and inaccessible to be trodden underfoot. Also, the canyon walls and gorges, which form so considerable parts of the area of the range, while inaccessible to domestic sheep, are well fringed with honey shrubs, and contain thousands of lovely bee gardens, lying hid in narrow side canyons and recesses, fenced with avalanche taluses, and on the top of flat projecting headlands, where only bees would think to look for them. But on the other hand, a great portion of the woody plants that escape the feet and teeth of the sheep are destroyed by the shepherds by means of running fires, which are set everywhere during the dry autumn for the purpose of burning off the old fallen trunks and underbrush, with a view to improving the pastures and making more open ways for the flocks. These destructive sheep fires sweep through nearly the entire forest belt of the range, from one extremity to the other, consuming not only the underbrush, but the young trees and seedlings on which the premise of the forest depends, thus setting in motion a long train of evils which will certainly reach far beyond bees and beekeepers.